Part 1. Stranded in the storm, the wind roared like a freight train, threatening to rip the rickety schoolhouse from its moorings in the desolate Montana territory. Inside, 26-year-old Emily Harper crouched beneath a tattered quilt, her breath visible in the dim glow of a nearly spent oil lamp. 3 days into the worst blizzard to strike the region since the 1850s, she had burned the last of her kindling and eaten the final crumbs of hardtack packed for what should have been a routine trip to the nearby town of Clearwater. The February storm had turned the rolling plains into a featureless white void, erasing all traces of the wagon trail that might have led to safety. Emily, a schoolteacher from Philadelphia, had never imagined herself in such peril. Raised in a bustling city, she was accustomed to cobblestone streets, gaslit parlors, and the comforts of a prosperous merchant family. But the panic of 1873 had shattered her father's business, and a smallpox outbreak claimed both her parents the following year. At 22, Emily found herself alone, armed only with her education and a fierce will to forge her own path. An advertisement in the Philadelphia Inquirer had seemed like a lifeline. Asterisk, educated woman sought to teach in thriving Montana settlement. Room, board, and modest salary provided. Asterisk, the ad promised a vibrant community hungry for culture. It neglected to mention that Pine Creek was little more than a cluster of sod houses and clapboard shacks, surrounded by endless prairie and inhabited by grizzled ranchers, retired soldiers, and transient prospectors. "You won't last a month, city gal," the grizzled stagecoach driver had grumbled when he dropped her at Pine Creek's lone boarding house. Easterners never do. 4 years later, Emily had proven him wrong. Her one-room schoolhouse now educated 27 children, from tow-headed 5-year-olds to lanky teens. She had mastered riding astride, endured brutal winters, and won the grudging respect of the town's toughest skeptics. Though she still spoke with the clipped precision of her Philadelphia upbringing, she had adopted a frontierswoman's pragmatism, a necessity in a land where a single misstep could mean death, which made her current predicament all the more infuriating. The journey to Clearwater was supposed to be simple, a 2-day meeting with Superintendent Clarence Hayes to discuss curriculum and the territory's meager educational funds. Clearwater lay just 30 miles north, a route Emily had traveled dozens of times. "You sure you don't need an escort, Miss Harper?" Sheriff Tom Baxter had asked at the general store, scratching his graying beard. "Weather's been shifty lately." "My boy could ride with you. Make sure you get there and back." Emily had waved off the offer with a confident smile. "Thank you, Sheriff, but the almanac predicts clear skies, and I know the trail like my own schoolroom. Besides, young Sam's arithmetic needs more attention than my travel plans." Baxter had frowned but relented. "Just pack extra, ma'am. Better to have it and not need it than the other way around." She had followed his advice, loading her sturdy mare, Daisy, with surplus blankets, jerky, and bullets for the small Colt revolver she carried for protection against wolves or the occasional drifter. She set out at dawn on Monday, expecting to reach Clearwater by dusk, attend the meeting, and return to Pine Creek by Thursday. But trouble struck by noon. A biting wind swept down from the Rockies, carrying a chill that pierced her heavy coat. Iron-gray clouds boiled on the horizon, racing toward her with alarming speed. Emily spurred Daisy to a trot, hoping to outrun the storm or at least reach the halfway point, a widow's homestead known to offer shelter. She never made it. The blizzard hit like a sledgehammer, plunging day into twilight. Snow fell in blinding torrents, driven sideways by winds that threatened to unseat her. Visibility shrank to a few feet, and the temperature plummeted. Disoriented, Emily glimpsed a shadow through the swirling white, an abandoned schoolhouse, its sagging roof barely visible. She had heard tales of the place, a relic from a failed settlement, but had never seen it. Now it was her only hope. Inside, the air was stale, but mercifully still. A rusted potbelly stove stood in one corner, and a teacher's desk remained at the front, though the student benches had long been scavenged. Emily led Daisy inside, grateful for the horse's warmth in the unheated space. With her last match, she lit the oil lamp from her saddlebag and assessed her situation. The storm showed no sign of weakening. If anything, it grew fiercer as night fell. The wind exploited every crack in the walls, sending icy tendrils to claw at her. Desperate, Emily smashed the desk into kindling and fed it to the stove, knowing it wouldn't last but needing any warmth she could muster. By the third morning, her situation was dire. The wood was gone, the last of her provisions consumed. Daisy stood listlessly, head bowed from hunger. Snow had drifted past the windows, trapping them inside. Emily scribbled in her leather journal, partly to stay sane, partly as a record for whoever might find her remains. February 17, 1878. The cold is unbearable. I've burned the last splinters and eaten the final scraps. The storm rages on, its howl almost melodic now. I think not of Philadelphia, a fading memory, but of Pine Creek, its rough-hewn warmth, its honest people. Are they searching for me? Will they find me in time? A sound interrupted her writing, not the wind but something deliberate. Footsteps crunching in the snow, steady and purposeful. Emily's hand flew to her revolver. Rescue seemed unlikely in this maelstrom. More likely, a desperate wanderer had spotted her lamp's faint glow and sought shelter, heedless of who might already be inside. She had heard grim tales of what happened to women alone on the frontier. The door rattled as something heavy pressed against it, dislodging the snow that sealed it shut. Emily cocked her revolver, her city-bred manners replaced by a survivor's resolve. She would not go down without a fight. The door burst open in a gust of snow and frigid air. A tall figure stood framed against the white, broad-shouldered and cloaked in furs, like a figure from a dime novel. For a moment they stared at each other, each gauging the other's intent. Then the figure stepped forward, pushing back his hood to reveal a man with weathered bronze skin, sharp cheekbones, and dark eyes that caught the lamp's flicker. His black hair was tied back in a braid, and his clothing blended native beadwork with a cavalry-issue coat. A Bowie knife hung at his hip, alongside a holstered revolver, and a Winchester rifle was slung across his back. "You're alive," he said in measured English, his voice carrying a faint accent. "Good. The others thought you'd be dead by now." Emily kept her revolver trained on him, her hands shaking from cold and exhaustion. "Who are you? How did you find me?" The man raised his hand slightly, palms open. "I'm John Red Wolf, scout for the 6th Cavalry and a member of the Crow Creek Band. When you didn't reach Clearwater, Superintendent Hayes sent riders, but they couldn't read the snow like I can. They looked in the wrong places." "You read the snow." Despite her fear, Emily's curiosity stirred. A faint smile crossed his face. "The prairie speaks to those who listen, even in a storm." He glanced at Daisy, then at the charred desk remnants and the dying lamp. "You've survived 3 days. Impressive. But you wouldn't have lasted another night." His blunt assessment, delivered without theatrics, convinced Emily to lower her weapon. "What now, Mr. Red Wolf?" John began unpacking a bundle, revealing dried venison, a water skin, and a precious stack of firewood. "Now, Miss Harper, we survive the night. Come morning, if the storm breaks as I expect, we head for Crow Creek. How do you know my name?" He paused, his dark eyes meeting hers. Everyone from here to the Bitterroot Mountains knows of the Philadelphia lady teaching frontier kids and riding solo across the plains. His tone held a hint of respect, not quite admiration but close. As John kindled a fire in the stove, warmth crept into the schoolhouse, pushing back the deadly chill. Emily realized she was in the presence of a man unlike any she had met in her 4 years out west. A man whose skills and perspective would set the stage for a story neither could have foreseen. Part 2. A night of survival. The fire crackled through the night, a lifeline against the cold that had nearly claimed Emily. John Red Wolf kept watch, feeding the stove with precision and occasionally stepping outside to gauge the storm's progress. Each time he returned, he brought a blast of icy air and a dusting of snow that melted in the fire's glow. Emily drifted in and out of sleep, her body slowly recovering now that survival seemed possible. Whenever she woke, she found John either tending the fire or sitting cross-legged by the door, eyes closed but alert, like a statue carved from the prairie itself. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. "When it's necessary," he replied, his eyes opening to reflect the firelight. "Tonight it isn't. You think I need a guard?" "The storm needs one," he corrected. "It's alive with its own moods. Those who forget that don't survive a second meeting." Their silence was comfortable, free of the awkwardness Emily might have expected given their vastly different worlds. There was a quiet strength in John's presence, a certainty that reminded her of the rugged independence she had cultivated on the frontier, but had yet to fully master. As dawn neared, the wind's howl softened, and the snow ceased its relentless assault. John stepped outside for longer than usual, returning with a rare smile. The storm said its piece. "We can move now." Preparations were swift. John added the last of the firewood to the stove, "for the next soul who needs it," he explained, while Emily gathered her meager belongings. Daisy, revived by rest, and a handful of dried oats from John's pack, stood ready. "What about your horse?" Emily asked, realizing she had seen no sign of one. "I came on foot," John said, as if hiking through a blizzard was as routine as a Sunday stroll. Emily's jaw dropped. "Through that storm? A man who moves with the wind can go where horses can't." Outside, the world was reborn in white, the snow several feet deep, with drifts nearly burying the schoolhouse. The sky was a brilliant blue, the sun casting long shadows across the pristine landscape. A coyote's distant yip, once terrifying, now felt like part of the wilderness's pulse. John scanned the terrain with a tracker's eye. "Crow Creek is 17 miles northeast. Good conditions could get us there by nightfall, but the snow will slow us. We'll stop at Raven's Hollow." Raven's Hollow. Emily had never heard of it despite her travels. "A shelter my people use, under a rock outcrop." "Not on your maps." John adjusted his rifle. "We move now while the day's young." The journey was grueling. Though the storm had passed, the cold bit deep, and the snow created barriers that tested Daisy's strength. John broke trail ahead, tireless despite his sleepless night. They spoke little, conserving energy, but John occasionally pointed out subtle landmarks: a jagged boulder, a frozen stream's curve, a distant ridge indistinguishable to Emily's untrained eye. At noon they rested in a grove of cottonwoods, sharing pemmican from John's pack. Emily, skeptical at first, found its rich, nutty flavor surprisingly satisfying. "I missed the superintendent's meeting," she said suddenly, the thought striking her. John's eyes twinkled with dry humor. "Hayes will forgive you, I reckon. He thought you were dead when you didn't show." "But you didn't." John studied her. "I've seen you ride between towns, always prepared, never reckless like most city folk." When others said you were gone, I figured you'd found a way to hold on." His simple confidence warmed her more than the weak winter sun. "You've watched me. Part of my job. As a scout, I track who moves through these parts for the cavalry and my people." A shadow crossed his face. "I walk a tightrope, Miss Harper, serving both sides. Not many choose it." Before she could probe further, John stood. "Sun's dipping. We need to move." The afternoon brought new challenges. The temperature dropped as the sun sank, and Daisy's steps grew labored. Even John's stamina showed signs of strain, his breath puffing in the frigid air. Just as Emily feared they'd be forced to camp exposed, John pointed to a rocky outcrop in the dusk. Raven's Hollow. The shelter was a marvel, a natural cave reinforced with stacked stones and timber, its entrance narrow but opening into a spacious interior shielded from the wind. A fire pit sat at the center, surrounded by smooth stones for seating, with bundles of kindling neatly stacked against the wall. "My grandfather helped build this," John said as Emily dismounted. "It saved many lives." "Your people maintain it for anyone who needs it?" Emily asked, helping unsaddle Daisy. "For anyone," John corrected. "Crow, settler, soldier. Winter doesn't pick sides, and neither do we." As darkness fell, John built a fire, its flames casting shadows that danced like spirits on the walls. Daisy munched contentedly on a nosebag of oats, while Emily and John shared pemmican and coffee from John's pouch. The setting's intimacy loosened their reserve, and conversation flowed. "How'd you end up scouting for the cavalry?" Emily asked, her curiosity overcoming her usual tact. John's gaze grew distant, fixed on the fire. "After the Battle of Little Bighorn, everything changed. The army cracked down on all tribes, whether they fought or not. My band, Crow Creek, had kept peace with settlers for years. My father was a translator at Fort Benton. But suddenly, we were all hostiles. Captain Reynolds offered a deal. If I scouted, our band could stay on our ancestral lands instead of being herded to the Blackfeet Reservation." "So you traded your freedom for theirs," Emily said softly. John shook his head. "I found a different freedom. As a scout, I move between worlds, white and crow. I can prevent blood from spilling over misunderstandings and protect what's left of our ways." The fire popped, sparks drifting upward. "And you, Miss Harper, what brought a Philadelphia heiress to teach in Montana?" Emily smiled wryly. "Necessity, mostly. After my parents died, I had an education but no prospects. The frontier offered a chance to matter, to build something real, not just be someone's wife or daughter." "You've never considered marriage?" John's directness, natural in this wild place, didn't offend her. "There have been suitors," she admitted. "Widower Thompson with his 4 kids, young Mr. Larson from the Mercantile, even Sheriff Baxter before his sister-in-law moved in. But I value my independence too much to give it up without a reason that sets my heart on fire." John nodded. "Among my people, a woman like you would be a leader. Our grandmothers often hold the final word in council, though the army never gets that." Their talk drifted to childhood memories. John's tales of buffalo hunts and starlit ceremonies, Emily's stories of Philadelphia's bustling markets and 4th of July parades. Despite their exhaustion, neither wanted the night to end, as if their fragile bond might fade with the dawn. When Emily finally slept, wrapped in blankets by the fire, her dreams wove together city streets and prairie trails, a world where both belonged. Part 3. Crow Creek and a new perspective. Dawn broke cold and clear at Raven's Hollow. John outlined their plan, a 9-mile trek to Crow Creek, where they'd rest before continuing to Pine Creek. "Crow Creek isn't a reservation," he clarified, sensing Emily's unspoken question. Not yet. It's our land, held since before the white man came. The government calls it unassigned while they debate old treaties. Will they honor them? Emily asked, already guessing the answer. John's smile was bitter. What do you think, Miss Harper? They set out as the sun rose, the snow firmer underfoot but still challenging. The landscape shifted, pines and birches dotting the prairie, a frozen river glinting in the distance. The Elk River, John said. Crow Creek's just beyond that ridge. He pointed to a rise crowned with tall pines standing like sentries. Will your people welcome a white schoolteacher? Emily asked, suddenly nervous. They'll welcome my guest, John said, his expression unreadable. But Crow Creek isn't what you expect. Cresting the ridge, Emily reined in Daisy, stunned. Instead of tippies, Crow Creek was a village of log cabins arranged in a crescent, with a large meeting hall at the center. Smoke curled from chimneys, and a corral held horses and cattle. A few tippies stood at the edge, their flaps angled to the wind. Surprised, John asked, amused. I expected something. Less settled, Emily admitted. We adapt, Miss Harper. We take what works from your world and keep what's ours. Disappointed? Not at all, she said carefully. Just learning how much I don't know. A tall man with graying hair approached, raising a hand in greeting. John introduced him as his father, William Red Wolf, the band's chief negotiator with the government. My son rarely brings guests, William said, his English polished. Especially white women. Miss Harper was caught in the blizzard, John explained. She found shelter in the old Grayson schoolhouse. William's eyebrows rose. That ruin. You're resourceful, Miss Harper. Luck and your son's tracking saved me, Emily replied. William gestured to the village. Come, you must be weary. Crow Creek buzzed with curious onlookers, children peeking from doorways, women pausing to watch. The village blended frontier practicality with Crow tradition. Gardens lay under snow, a forge stood near the corral, and the meeting hall doubled as a school. My daughter Mary teaches here, William said. She studied at the Carlisle Indian School, but returned to us. Inside William's cabin, Emily met Hannah Red Wolf, John's mother, whose warm but cautious welcome mirrored the village's mood. The cabin was cozy, with quillwork on the mantel and buffalo hides as rugs, a cavalry saber and a war club hanging above the hearth. Over venison stew, Emily met Mary Red Wolf, the village teacher, whose sharp intellect matched her brother's quiet strength. How many students do you teach? Mary asked. 27, ages 5 to 16, Emily replied. And you? 18 in winter. Spring brings hunting, and some families follow old routes. Their talk turned to teaching challenges, scarce books, irregular attendance, blending cultures. William and Hannah listened, while John watched with quiet approval. As night fell, Mary showed Emily to a guest cabin, simple but warm. Crow Creek surprises you, Mary said. Most whites see only savages or myths. Your brother said I look with clear eyes, Emily replied. I hope that's true. Mary paused at the door. John sees something in you, Miss Harper. A rare openness. Sleep brought dreams of Philadelphia merging with prairie, students from both worlds learning together. Morning revealed Crow Creek alive with daily tasks, women tanning hides, men tending livestock, children playing games that transcended language. John prepared a sled for the journey to Pine Creek, explaining it would ease Daisy's load. Over breakfast, Hannah pressed Emily with questions about her solitary life in Pine Creek. A woman needs kin, Hannah said. It's a heavy load to carry alone. I've managed, Emily said, deflecting. At what cost? Hannah's gaze was piercing. I see the weight in your eyes." Before Emily could respond, John and William entered, announcing the sled was ready. Farewells were warm, Mary extracting a promise to share teaching ideas, Hannah gifting food for the road. William's parting words lingered, "You're welcome here, Miss Harper. Those who see past borders are rare." Part 4. Return to Pine Creek. The sled glided smoothly, Daisy pulling it with ease. John led, following an unseen trail. "Your family's remarkable," Emily said as Crow Creek faded behind them. "They've endured much," John replied. "My father fears relocation, though he hides it. Coal's been found on our land, and the government's eyeing it." "That's unjust," Emily said. "Your village is thriving, blending old and new." John's laugh was grim. "Coal means railroads, and railroads mean progress. Progress doesn't care who's in the way." They rested at noon, sharing Hannah's provisions. "Why stay in Pine Creek?" John asked. "You could teach in bigger towns." "I'm needed here," Emily said. "These kids had no school before me. Now they read, write, dream. In Pine Creek, I'm not just a merchant's daughter, I'm me." John nodded. "Freedom to be yourself. Like me, scouting between worlds." Their shared understanding hung between them, electric and unspoken. As they neared Pine Creek, signs of settlement appeared, fences, cabins, a wagon trail. The town's church steeple rose in the distance, but unusual activity stirred the main street. "Something's up," John said, his scout's instincts sharp. "Maybe another storm," Emily suggested, though the sky was clear. Closer, they saw Sheriff Baxter gesturing to a crowd, Mrs. Larson from the boarding house scanning the horizon, and Superintendent Hayes in his city suit. Young Sam Baxter spotted them, shouting, "It's Miss Harper. She's alive." The townsfolk surged forward, their disbelief turning to joy. Mrs. Larson hugged Emily fiercely. "We thought you were gone, girl." 3 days, no word. The search parties gave up. Sheriff Baxter approached, eyeing John warily. "Miss Harper, thank God." "And you are?" "John Red Wolf, 6th Cavalry Scout," John said evenly. "I found her in the old Grayson schoolhouse." "You tracked her through that storm." Baxter shook John's hand, relaxing slightly. "Pine Creek owes you." Superintendent Hayes pushed through, rumpled but relieved. "Miss Harper, extraordinary. We were drafting a letter to your kin in Philadelphia." "No need," Emily said, shivering at the thought. "Mr. Red Wolf's skills brought me back." Young Tommy Larson, one of her students, piped up. "Is he really a Crow Scout? Did he find you in the blizzard?" "Yes, Tommy," Emily said, smiling. "His tracking was near miraculous." Her praise shifted the crowd's mood from suspicion to curiosity. Baxter clapped John's shoulder. "Join us at the boarding house, Red Wolf. Mrs. Larson's got plenty of grub." John hesitated, glancing at Emily. "I should report to Fort Benton, but—" "Nonsense," Emily said, surprising herself. "You've traveled far. Stay for a meal." Mrs. Larson nodded firmly. "No one leaves my table hungry, especially not the man who saved our teacher." The boarding house dining room was tense, the long table divided between regulars, blacksmith Mr. Jenkins, milliner Widow Hayes, young Dr. Carter, and Emily and John, with Mrs. Larson as mediator. Conversation stumbled, the townsfolk stealing glances at John, who ate with quiet dignity. Dr. Carter broke the silence. "Mr. Red Wolf, how'd you become a cavalry scout?" "My father translated at Fort Benton," John said. "After the Black Hills gold rush soured things, Captain Reynolds needed scouts who knew both worlds. I was chosen for my tracking." "Fascinating," Carter said. No conflict moving between worlds. There's always tension, John replied, glancing at Emily. But some days the bridge is worth it. The meal ended, and Emily and John moved to the parlor, its mismatched chairs cozy by the firelight. "They're glad you're back," John said. "They're kind mostly," Emily replied. "But your presence stirs them. A Crow Scout isn't what they're used to." "The cavalry badge helps," John said. "But Crow Creek's in trouble. Cole's changing everything." "There must be a way," Emily said. "If Pine Creek's leaders spoke up." John smiled. Always the teacher, thinking knowledge fixes all. "The fight's in Washington, not here." "Then we take it to Washington," Emily insisted. "Hayes has contacts, and Eastern papers might listen." John leaned forward, earnest. "Your heart's in it, but this isn't your fight. You've got your students, your town. Survival's not enough when justice is on the line," Emily said quietly. Before John could reply, Mrs. Larson entered with tea, her gaze knowing. "Mr. Red Wolf, I've got a room for you." "No traveling tonight," she turned to Emily. "The kids need to see their teacher's hero tomorrow." Part 5. A new frontier morning brought sunlight and Pine Creek's familiar sounds: wagons, shopkeepers, the blacksmith's hammer. Emily descended to find John talking with Dr. Carter, Mrs. Larson beaming as she served flapjacks. "Good morning, Miss Harper," John said, rising. "I'm glad you stayed," Emily replied, taking a seat beside him. The door burst open, and a dozen students flooded in, led by Tommy Larson. "Miss Harper," they cried, Elizabeth Hayes sobbing with relief. Emily hugged them, tears in her eyes as they bombarded her with questions. Tommy turned to John. "Thank you for saving her, sir. She's the best teacher ever." John shook his hand gravely. "Miss Harper spoke highly of you all." "I see why." The children swarmed John, asking about tracking and Crow traditions. He answered patiently, his reserve melting. Sheriff Baxter leaned toward Emily. "Hayes wants you in Clearwater next week to report on this. Captain Reynolds will be there, talking education for peaceful tribes. Your tie to Red Wolf could matter." "What are you suggesting?" Emily asked. "Your story, Bridging Worlds, might shape policy," Baxter said. "If you're willing to speak up." Emily watched John show Tommy the sled's bone runners, a vision forming. Not just advocacy for Crow Creek, but a school where both communities' children could learn together. "I'll have thoughts to share," she said. The week passed in a blur of normalcy, but Emily felt changed. The schoolhouse, her students, even coffee by the fire held new meaning after her brush with death. The townsfolk treated her with deeper respect, her survival earning her a place among the frontier's toughened elite. John left the next day, their farewell brief but charged. "Safe travels, John," Emily said on the boarding house porch. "And you, Emily," he replied, his smile warm. "Crow Creek's open to you, should the trail lead there again." His invitation echoed as Emily prepared for Clearwater, packing cautiously with Sam Baxter as escort. Mrs. Larson invited her for tea, her shrewd eyes cutting through pretense. "You're thinking about that meeting," she said. "Captain Reynolds will be there, and talks brewing about schooling for tribes like Crow Creek." "How do you know this?" Emily asked. "My husband was Fort Benton's quartermaster," Mrs. Larson said. "I keep in touch with old friends. Education's less thorny than land, but it shapes the future." "Why tell me now?" "You're at a crossroads, Emily. Your time with Red Wolf and Crow Creek gives you a voice to shape things for both sides." "I'm just a teacher," Emily protested. "Teachers shape minds and minds shape society," Mrs. Larson said. "Your view of the Crow changed, didn't it?" "Of course," Emily admitted. Seeing their lives talking with Mary, it made it real. Imagine kids from both sides learning that early, Mrs. Larson said. Before hate sets in. The vision struck deep, but obstacles loomed. The government wants assimilation, not exchange. Show them a better way, Mrs. Larson said. Reynolds is practical. He'll see the value in peace over war. In Clearwater, Emily found a note from Mrs. Larson tucked in her valise, offering land between Pine Creek and Crow Creek for a shared school. At the meeting, she proposed a supplementary program where children from both communities would learn each other's skills and languages, sparking debate but winning support from Captain Reynolds and Judge Thornton. John arrived with a formal proposal from Crow Creek, aligning with Emily's vision. Their combined efforts secured approval, setting the stage for a new kind of education in Montana. Part 6. A bridge built 2 years later, a school stood on neutral ground, its design blending log cabin and Crow Lodge. Children America's anthem played faintly outside. Children laughed in English and Crow, switching languages effortlessly. Emily, now adorned with Crow beadwork, moved among them, her Philadelphia polish softened by frontier grit. John, back from scouting, joined her on the porch as students left, their wedding bands glinting in the sunlight, a union that surprised no one. Judge Thornton's report secured Crow Creek's land rights, a victory born from their school's success. "We've won a battle," John said, "but the war's not over." Emily gazed at the prairie, her hand in his. "I thought the blizzard was my end." "It was just the start. The Crows say you must get lost to find your path," John said. "And you led me home," Emily finished, squeezing his hand. As the sunset painted the sky, a teacher from Philadelphia and a Crow scout stood together, their school a beacon of hope, reshaping the frontier one lesson at a time. Part 7. A legacy in the making. 2 years after the school's opening, the Montana Territory was changing, and the humble wooden structure on the neutral ground between Pine Creek and Crow Creek stood as a quiet testament to that shift. The school, with its cedar shingle roof and windows framed in Crow beadwork, was no longer just a building. It was a symbol, whispered about in saloons and trading posts from Bozeman to Helena. Children from both communities now greeted each other like old friends, their laughter mingling in English and Crow as they traded lessons in arithmetic and tracking, poetry and plant lore. The 4th of July celebrations last summer had seen Pine Creek's families sharing picnic blankets with Crow Creek's, a sight that would have been unthinkable a few years prior. Emily Harpered Wolf, as she was now known, stood at the schoolhouse door, her blue wool dress adorned with a beaded belt Hannah Red Wolf had crafted for her wedding day. The gold band on her finger caught the autumn sunlight, a quiet reminder of the union that had grown from a blizzard's crucible. At 28, Emily was no longer just the Philadelphia schoolteacher who tamed the frontier's skepticism. She was a leader, her name carried on territorial dispatches alongside John's, their partnership a beacon for those who believed the West could be more than a battleground of cultures. Inside, Mary Red Wolf led a group of students through a lesson on medicinal herbs, her voice steady as she explained how sage could soothe a fever, a skill Pine Creek's ranchers now valued as much as their own almanacs. Across the room, Emily's former student, Tommy Larson, now a lanky teenager, demonstrated a simple compass trick to younger children, his confidence a far cry from the boy who'd once struggled with fractions. The school's curriculum, a careful blend of Crow traditions and Western academics, had become a model, drawing curious visitors from as far as Missoula. Superintendent Clarence Hayes had even published a report, *Education as Diplomacy*, crediting Emily and the Red Wolf family for proving that shared learning could forge peace where treaties often failed. Outside, John dismounted from his bay gelding, his cavalry coat dusted with the red earth of the trail. His role as scout had evolved since the school's success caught the territorial government's eye. Captain Reynolds now tasked him with identifying other communities where similar programs could take root, from the Blackfeet in the north to the Cheyenne along the Yellowstone River. Today, he carried news from Fort Benton, his expression a mix of triumph and caution as he joined Emily on the porch. The governor's office approved funding for 3 more schools, John said, his voice low to avoid the children's ears. 1 near Fort Shaw, 2 along the Powder River. They're calling it the Harper Wolf model. Emily's breath caught, pride warring with disbelief. 3 more. That's incredible. John's smile was tempered. It's a start, but there's pushback. Councilman Rutherford's got investors grumbling, says schools like ours make it harder to claim tribal lands for mining. He's got friends in Washington stirring trouble. Emily's jaw tightened, her Philadelphia-bred sense of justice flaring. Let them grumble. The territorial court's ruling on Crow Creek's land rights sets a precedent. Judge Thornton made that clear. Thornton's one man, John cautioned, his scout's pragmatism surfacing. And Washington's a long way off. My father says we're dancing on a knife's edge. Every success makes us a bigger target. The weight of his words settled between them, but Emily's resolve didn't waver. She'd faced death in a blizzard and prejudice in a boarding house. She wasn't about to falter now. Then we keep building, she said. More schools, more bridges. Let them try to tear down what's already standing. John's dark eyes softened, a rare warmth breaking through his reserve. You sound like my grandmother. She'd have liked you. Before Emily could reply, a shout drew their attention. Young Joseph Red Wolf, Mary's son, raced up, holding a crudely drawn map. Miss Harper, Tommy and I charted the creek like you showed us. Can we show the others tomorrow? Emily knelt, examining the map with mock seriousness. This is fine work, Joseph. You and Tommy plan a lesson for the younger ones. Maybe add a story about the creek's history from your grandfather. Joseph beamed and darted off, leaving Emily and John chuckling. The moment was interrupted by the clatter of hooves. Sheriff Tom Baxter, riding in with a leather satchel slung over his shoulder. Afternoon, folks, he called, dismounting with a grunt. Got a letter from Hayes. He's coming next week with some bigwigs from Washington. They want to see the school in action. Washington, Emily's brow furrowed. That's sudden. Baxter handed her the letter, his weathered face thoughtful. Reckon it's your doing, Miss Harper. Pardon, Mrs. Red Wolf. Word spread about this place. They are talking about federal funds, maybe even a national program. John's expression grew guarded. Federal funds come with strings. We'll need to watch their terms. Always the scout, Baxter said, clapping John's shoulder. But you've got allies now. Mrs. Larson's been writing to her old quartermaster contacts, and Dr. Carter's got a cousin in the Senate making noise about education reform. Emily broke the letter seal, scanning Hayes' precise handwriting. The superintendent's tone was effusive, detailing plans for a delegation including a senator's aide and a Department of the Interior official. They're calling it a frontier experiment in cultural cooperation, she read aloud. They want a full demonstration, lessons, student projects, even a community meal. A meal, John raised an eyebrow. Like the potlucks Pine Creek throws for harvest. Exactly, Emily said, her mind already racing. We'll have Hannah's venison stew, Mrs. Larson's cornbread, and that berry pie Widow Hayes swears by. Let them see what happens when people share a table. Baxter chuckled. You're gonna feed Washington bureaucrats frontier grub. That's a sight I'd pay to see. As Baxter rode off, Emily and John lingered on the porch, the schoolhouse behind them alive with the hum of learning. The prairie stretched endless before them, its golden grasses swaying under an October sky. Emily thought of the abandoned schoolhouse where this journey began, its crumbling walls a stark contrast to the vibrant community they'd built. "When I was trapped in that blizzard," she said softly, "I thought I'd lost everything. Now I see it was the storm that gave me this." John took her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. "The Crow have a story about the wind. It scatters what's weak, but carries what's strong to new places. That storm carried us here." Emily squeezed his hand, the weight of their shared path grounding her. "And it's not done carrying us yet." The following week, the school buzzed with preparation. Children polished their projects. Maps, poems, even a model of a Crow lodge built alongside a settler's cabin. Mary and Emily coordinated lessons, while Hannah and Mrs. Larson rallied Pine Creek and Crow Creek women to prepare a feast that would rival any church social. When the delegation arrived, led by a bespectacled aide named Mr. Pritchard and a stern interior official, Mr. Grayson, they were greeted by a sea of faces: ranchers in denim, Crow families in beaded vests, children clutching handmade books. Emily delivered a presentation in the schoolhouse, her voice steady as she outlined the program's success. Literacy rates up in both communities, fewer incidents of conflict, and a growing trade in skills like herbal remedies and blacksmithing. John followed, his scout's precision evident as he described Crow Creek's commitment to the partnership, his words carrying the weight of his band's history. Tommy and Joseph presented their creek map, earning nods from Pritchard, while Mary's herb lesson left Grayson scribbling notes. At the meal, held under a canvas canopy strung with lanterns, the air was thick with the sense of cornbread, stew, and pie. Pritchard, initially stiff, loosened up over a second helping of pie, laughing at Tommy's tale of tracking a rabbit. Grayson, though reserved, asked Hannah about her beating, his curiosity genuine. As the sun set, Superintendent Hayes raised a tin cup of coffee and a toast. "To the Harper-Ed Wolf model," he said. "Proof that the frontier's future lies in learning, not fighting." Later, as the delegation departed, Pritchard pulled Emily aside. "The senator will hear about this, Mrs. Red Wolf. You've given us something to fight for in Washington, not just funds but a vision." Grayson, overhearing, added gruffly, "Don't expect miracles. Mining lobbies are loud. But this," he gestured to the school, "makes a strong case." As the wagons rolled away, Emily and John stood together, the schoolhouse glowing in the twilight. "We're not done," John said, his voice firm. "Rutherford's kind won't quit." "Then neither will we," Emily replied, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "One school, 3 schools, 100. We'll keep building until the frontier knows no borders but the ones we choose." John's smile was a promise. "Together, Abigail." The wind stirred, carrying the scent of sage and pine, and in its whisper, Emily heard the echo of a blizzard that had not ended her story but begun it. A legacy now written in the laughter of children, the strength of 2 communities, and the love that had grown from a storm's mercy. Part 8. Shadows on the horizon. October 1881 cast a golden glow over the Montana Territory, the prairie grasses swaying under a sky so vast it seemed to hold the promise of forever. The schoolhouse on the neutral ground between Pine Creek and Crow Creek stood prouder now, its walls reinforced with fresh timber, and a new wing added to accommodate the growing number of students. 50 children, half from Pine Creek's settler families and half from Crow Creek's band, filled the classrooms each day, their voices weaving a tapestry of English and Crow, multiplication tables, and oral histories. The Harper-Red Wolf model had become a quiet legend, its success fueling 3 new schools across the territory and drawing the attention of reformers as far east as Chicago. Emily Harper-Red Wolf, now 29, moved through the schoolyard with the easy grace of someone who'd traded Philadelphia's cobblestone propriety for the frontier's unyielding rhythm. Her dark hair, pinned loosely, was adorned with a single crow bead, a gift from her sister-in-law, Mary Red Wolf, whose steady presence anchored the school's crow curriculum. Emily's blue dress, patched but meticulously mended, bore the faint dust of the chalkboard, a badge of her calling. Beside her stood John Red Wolf, his cavalry coat replaced by a leather vest embroidered with crow patterns, though the Winchester rifle slung across his back spoke to his unchanged role as scout and protector. Their marriage, now 3 years strong, had weathered storms both literal and political, their bond a cornerstone of the community they'd built. The school's influence had rippled outward. Pine Creek's ranchers now sought Mary's advice on drought-resistant crops, while Crow Creek's hunters traded venison for blacksmith work. Last summer's Independence Day celebration had drawn a crowd from Bozeman, where a fiddler's reel had blended with crow drumming, a moment that left even the most grizzled prospectors clapping. Yet, as Emily watched a group of students, Tommy Larson and Joseph Red Wolf among them, practice a joint presentation on the Elk River's ecology, a shadow of unease lingered. The territorial government's support, while generous, came with scrutiny, and whispers of new mining interests threatened the fragile peace Crow Creek had secured. The trouble arrived on a crisp morning, heralded by the thud of hooves and the jangle of spurs. Emily was mid-lesson, explaining fractions with a pie chart drawn on the blackboard, when young Elizabeth Hayes burst through the door, her braids bouncing. "Miss Harper, there's men at the gate." Fancy suits like city folk, with Sheriff Baxter and some soldiers. Emily exchanged a glance with Mary, whose dark eyes narrowed. "Keep the children here," Emily said, wiping chalk from her hands. "I'll see what's what." Outside, John was already at the gate, his posture calm but alert, like a mountain lion sizing up a threat. Sheriff Tom Baxter stood beside a group of 5 men, 2 in tailored suits, their bowler hats absurdly out of place, 2 cavalry troopers in dusty blue, and a lean, hawk-faced man in a black duster, his badge marking him as a federal marshal. Baxter's weathered face was grim, his usual warmth replaced by unease. "Mrs. Red Wolf, Mr. Red Wolf," he said, tipping his hat. "These gentlemen are from Helena and farther east. They've got business with the school." The man in the lead suit, portly with a waxed mustache, stepped forward, clutching a leather portfolio. "Mrs. Harper-Red Wolf, I presume." "I'm Everett Langston, territorial surveyor, representing the Montana Development Consortium. This is Mr. Clarence Vaughn, legal counsel for the Interior Department." He gestured to the second suited man, whose cold blue eyes flicked over the schoolhouse like a banker appraising a foreclosure. "And Marshal Gideon Holt, here to ensure compliance." "Compliance with what?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Langston's smile was practiced, all teeth and no warmth. "The consortium has identified significant coal deposits extending from Crow Creek's eastern boundary to this neutral ground. The Interior Department is reviewing land allocations to facilitate extraction. Your school, while admirable, occupies a critical access point." John's hand tightened on his rifle strap, though his expression remained impassive. "This land was deeded for education by Mrs. Larson, approved by Judge Thornton. Crow Creek's rights were secured 2 years ago." Vaughn, the lawyer, adjusted his spectacles. "The deed is under review, Mr. Red Wolf." Federal law prioritizes mineral claims over private grants, especially when national interests, railroads, industry, are at stake. The school's presence complicates access, which could delay progress. Progress? Emily's tone sharpened, her Philadelphia polish giving way to frontier steel. You mean tearing up land that feeds two communities to line the pockets of men who have never set foot here? Langston's smile faltered, but Marshal Holt's voice cut through, low and gravelly. Watch your tone, ma'am. We're here on federal authority. Relocation of the school, and Crow Creek if necessary, is being considered. The words hit like a winter gust, chilling Emily to her core. She glanced at John, whose dark eyes burned with restrained fury. Relocation was ruled out by the territorial court, he said. Captain Reynolds himself endorsed this school as a model for peace. Captain Reynolds commands a fort, not a courtroom, Vaughn replied. The Interior Department answers to Washington, and Washington wants coal. Your band's adaptability is noted, but it doesn't supersede economic imperatives. Baxter shifted uncomfortably, his loyalty to Pine Creek warring with his duty. Now hold on. This school's done more for the territory than any mine. Folks in Pine Creek won't take kindly to it being shut down. We're not shutting it down, Langston said, his tone conciliatory but hollow. We propose moving it closer to Pine Creek, where it can continue without obstructing development. And leave Crow Creek isolated, Emily countered. This school's strength is its neutrality, equal ground for both communities. Move it and you break that trust. Vaughn's lips thinned. Trust is a fine sentiment, Mrs. Red Wolf, but coal drives the railroads, and railroads drive the nation. Sentiment doesn't pay for progress. The standoff was interrupted by the schoolhouse door opening. Mary Red Wolf emerged, her presence commanding despite her simple calico dress. Behind her, Tommy and Joseph peered out, their project forgotten. If you're discussing our future, Mary said, her voice clear as a bell, you'll do it where our children can hear. They deserve to know what's at stake. Langston hesitated, clearly unaccustomed to such directness from a native woman, but Marshal Holt's cold gaze didn't waver. This isn't a public forum, ma'am. Return to your duties. She's not your servant, John said, his voice low but edged with steel. She's a teacher, and this is her school. The tension crackled, the troopers' hands inching toward their holsters. Emily stepped forward, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. Gentlemen, if you want to talk progress, let's talk facts. This school has raised literacy rates by 30% in both communities. It's reduced conflicts, saving the cavalry thousands in patrol costs. Last year, our students' agricultural projects, combining crow planting techniques with settler tools, increased crop yields for Pine Creek by a quarter. That's progress you can measure, not just dig out of the ground. Vaughn's eyes narrowed, but Langston seemed momentarily swayed. Impressive, but the coal isn't going anywhere, Emily interrupted. The school doesn't block your access. The neutral ground is a half-mile wide, plenty of room for a road to your mines without touching this land. Baxter seized the opening. She's right. Pine Creek's got surveyors who can map a route. No need to append what's working. Holt's sneer was barely concealed. You're awfully invested, Sheriff. Federal orders don't bend for local sentiment. Then take it to Judge Thornton, John said. He's in Helena next week. Let him rule on the deed's validity. Vaughn exchanged a glance with Langston, clearly weighing the delay. We'll consider it, Vaughn said finally. But expect a formal inspection in 10 days. If the school's operations interfere with federal interests, relocation will proceed. As the men mounted up, Langston tipped his hat with forced courtesy. "Good day, Mrs. Red Wolf, Mr. Red Wolf. We'll be in touch." Holt lingered, his gaze locking with John's. "Don't mistake patience for weakness, Scout. Federal law doesn't negotiate." John met his stare without flinching. "Neither does justice, Marshal." The group rode off, leaving a cloud of dust and a heavier weight of uncertainty. Baxter lingered, his face apologetic. "I didn't know they were coming, Emily. Word came from Helena this morning. I'll send a telegram to Hayes and Thornton, see what we can do." "Thank you, Tom," Emily said, her voice softer now. "We'll need every ally we can get." As Baxter departed, Mary joined them, her expression fierce. "They won't stop. Men like that see land as money, not life." "Then we fight with what we have," Emily said. "The school, the children, the truth." John nodded, his hand finding hers, their fingers interlocking. "My father's calling a council meeting tonight. We'll need Crow Creek's voice and Pine Creek's." That evening, the schoolhouse glowed with lamplight, its new wing packed with faces from both communities. William Red Wolf stood at the front, his graying hair catching the light as he addressed the crowd in English and Crow, his translator's skill bridging the room's diversity. "This school is our heart," he said. "It's taught our children to walk two paths without losing their way. Now outsiders threaten to tear it down. We must stand together, Crow and settler, or lose what we've built." Mrs. Larson, her white hair pinned tightly, rose from the Pine Creek side. "I didn't give this land to see it dug up for coal. I've got letters out to my quartermaster contacts in Washington, and Dr. Carter's cousin in the Senate's drafting a petition. We're not helpless." Tommy Larson, now a young man with his father's broad shoulders, stood next. "Me and Joseph have been talking to the students. We want to write to the newspapers, Chicago, New York, anywhere that'll listen. Let the country know what's happening." Hannah Red Wolf, seated beside Emily, added quietly, "Our women are preparing gifts, beadwork, quillwork, to send with those letters. Beauty speaks when words alone fail." The room buzzed with ideas. A public demonstration during the inspection, a petition signed by every family, even a children's march to Helena. Emily felt a surge of pride, tempered by the weight of responsibility. She stood, her voice carrying the clarity of her classroom. 10 days isn't long, but it's enough. We'll show them this school isn't just a building, it's a future. We'll invite the territorial press, document every lesson, every success. And we'll remind them that tearing us apart costs more than any coal vein's worth." John's gaze met hers, his pride evident. "The Crow have a saying, the strongest roots grow in the hardest soil. This is our soil, and our roots are deep." The meeting stretched late, plans solidifying like a war council. By the time the crowd dispersed, the schoolhouse felt less like a target and more like a fortress. Emily and John lingered on the porch, the stars above sharp as diamonds in the cold night air. "I thought the blizzard was our greatest test," Emily said, her breath visible. "But this feels bigger." "It is," John replied, his arm slipping around her. "The storm tested our survival. This tests our legacy." Emily leaned into him, the warmth of his presence grounding her. "When I took shelter in that old schoolhouse, I was alone, afraid. Now look at us, two communities, one fight. Whatever comes, we're not alone anymore." John's voice was soft but certain. "The wind carried us here, Emily. It'll carry us through." Over the next 10 days, Pine Creek and Crow Creek became a whirlwind of action. Children crafted posters, their drawings of the schoolhouse flanked by Crow lodges and settler cabins. Mary and Emily compiled a report detailing the school's measurable impacts: literacy, crop yields, even a drop in cattle rustling as trust grew. Mrs. Larson's letters reached Washington, prompting a telegram from Dr. Carter's cousin promising Senate attention. Sheriff Baxter rallied Pine Creek's ranchers, who pledged to attend the inspection, their presence a silent warning to the consortium. The inspection day dawned clear, the schoolyard packed with supporters. Territorial reporters, tipped off by Tommy's letters, scribbled furiously as children presented their projects. Judge Thornton arrived, his silver hair gleaming, flanked by Superintendent Hayes and Captain Reynolds. Langston and Vaughn returned, their confidence shaken by the crowd, while Marshal Holt's scowl deepened. Emily and John stood side by side, their hands clasped, as William Red Wolf presented a new petition, signed by 200 families, demanding the school's protection. Thornton's ruling, delivered the following week in Helena, was unequivocal. The school's deed was inviolable, its role as essential infrastructure outweighing mineral claims. The consortium's plans were rerouted, a new access road mapped a mile east. The victory was celebrated with a feast that rivaled the 4th of July, Pine Creek's fiddlers joining Crow drummers under a harvest moon. As Emily and John watched the children dance, their laughter echoing across the prairie, Emily thought of the blizzard that had nearly claimed her. It had been a crucible, forging not just their love, but a vision that now stretched beyond Montana's borders. "We've built something real," she said, her voice thick with emotion. John's smile was her anchor. "And we're just getting started." The wind whispered through the grasses, carrying the promise of new battles, new bridges, and a frontier where two worlds could stand as one. Part 9. A wider horizon. The autumn of 1883 painted the Montana Territory in hues of amber and crimson, the prairie's endless sweep now crisscrossed by the iron veins of the Northern Pacific Railroad. Its steel tracks, completed just months earlier, had brought new settlers, speculators, and tensions to the region, transforming Pine Creek from a sleepy outpost into a bustling hub with a new saloon, a telegraph office, and a weekly stagecoach to Bozeman. The schoolhouse on the neutral ground between Pine Creek and Crow Creek stood as a steadfast anchor amid this change, its cedar walls weathered but proud, its classrooms now filled with 60 students whose chatter in English and Crow echoed like a hymn to possibility. Emily Harper Wolf, now 31, stood at the school's flagpole, raising the stars and stripes alongside a Crow-designed banner, a daily ritual symbolizing the dual heritage her students embraced. Her face, tanned by years under the Montana sun, bore fine lines of resilience, and her blue dress was accented with a beaded shawl from Hannah Red Wolf, a quiet nod to her adopted family. Beside her, John Red Wolf adjusted his hat, his cavalry days behind him but his scout's instincts sharper than ever. As liaison for the Territorial Education Board, he traveled often, carrying the Harper Wolf model to new communities, from the Blackfeet lands near Glacier to the Cheyenne camps along the Tongue River. Their marriage, a union forged in a blizzard's crucible, had grown into a partnership that balanced love with purpose, though the weight of their mission sometimes strained the quiet moments they craved. The school's success had become a beacon. Its students like Tommy Larson, now a teacher's aide at 18, and Joseph Red Wolf, apprenticing as a tracker, were living proof that shared education could bridge divides. Pine Creek's merchants sold Crow beadwork alongside settler quilts, and Crow Creek's hunters joined Pine Creek's cattle drives, their combined efforts boosting the region's economy. The territorial press hailed the school as a frontier miracle, and letters from Eastern reformers, some penned by women inspired by Emily's story, poured in, seeking advice on replicating the model. Yet with success came new challenges, and the latest arrived on a dusty September morning, carried by a telegram that shook Emily's world. She was grading essays on the Lewis and Clark expedition, her students' handwriting a mix of careful cursive and crow pictographs, when Sheriff Tom Baxter rode up, his face grim under his weathered Stetson. "Emily John," he said, dismounting with a creak of leather. "Got a wire from Helena. Superintendent Hayes is stepping down, and the new man, Reginald Prescott, wants a meeting. He's got big plans for your model, and not all of 'em sound friendly." John, reviewing a map for his next trip, looked up sharply. "Prescott, the railroad lawyer." "The same," Baxter said, handing over the telegram. "He's tight with the Northern Pacific and that mining crowd you tangled with 2 years back. Word is, he's pushing to centralize your schools under territorial control, maybe even fold them into the Indian boarding system." Emily's stomach churned as she read the telegram's curt prose. Asterisk, Harper Wolf model to be evaluated for territorial integration. Prepare for inspection and policy discussion. Helena, October 15. Prescott, acting superintendent. Asterisk, the Indian boarding schools, notorious for stripping native children of their language and culture, were the antithesis of everything she and John had built. "They can't do this," she said, her voice low but fierce. "The court protected our school. Crow Creek's land is secure." Baxter scratched his beard. "Legally sure. But Prescott's got pull in Washington, and the railroad's lobbying hard. They see your schools as a way to civilize tribes while clearing land for tracks. Mrs. Larson's already wiring her contacts, but you'll need more than letters this time." John folded the map, his expression unreadable but his eyes burning. "My father warned me about men like Prescott. They don't fight fair, they rewrite the rules." "Then we rewrite them back," Emily said, her Philadelphia grit melding with frontier defiance. "We'll go to Helena, show them what this model really means. The children deserve that." The journey to Helena was a far cry from the blizzard-torn trail of 5 years ago. The stagecoach rattled along a graded road, its windows framing a landscape dotted with new homesteads and railroad camps. Emily and John traveled with Mary Red Wolf, whose expertise as Crow Creek's teacher would bolster their case, and Tommy Larson, whose earnest testimony as a student-turned-aide could sway hearts. The group carried a trunk of evidence: student work, economic reports, even a petition signed by 300 families from both communities, its pages heavy with hope and resolve. Helena, now a booming capital with brick storefronts and electric street lamps, buzzed with the energy of progress. The territorial capital, a squat building with ambitions of grandeur, hosted the meeting in a wood-paneled chamber that smelled of cigar smoke and ink. Reginald Prescott, a wiry man with a slick mustache and a lawyer's calculating gaze, presided at a long oak table, flanked by 2 railroad executives in pinstripe suits and a Department of the Interior official named Silas Granger, whose dour face suggested he'd rather be elsewhere. Judge Thornton, a steadfast ally, sat at the table's end, his silver hair catching the lamplight, while Captain Reynolds, now a major, observed from the sidelines, his presence a quiet reassurance. Prescott opened with a smile as sharp as a switchblade. "Mrs. Harper Wolf, Mr. Red Wolf, your school's achievements are commendable, but the territory's needs have evolved. The Northern Pacific's expansion demands efficiency, centralized education, uniform standards. Your model, while charming, is too localized. We propose integrating it into a territorial system, with oversight from Helena and alignment with federal boarding school policies." Emily felt John tense beside her, but she spoke first, her voice clear as a school bell. "Mr. Prescott, our model's strength is its local roots. It respects both Crow and settler traditions, fostering peace and prosperity. Centralizing it risks destroying what makes it work, trust between communities. Granger, the interior official, leaned forward, his spectacles glinting. Peace is admirable, but the government prioritizes assimilation. Native children must be prepared for a modern economy, not tribal relics. Mary Red Wolf's eyes flashed, but her tone remained measured. Our children learn English, mathematics, and science alongside Crow knowledge. They are not relics, they are the future equipped for both worlds. Last year, our graduates helped Pine Creek double its wheat yield using Crow planting methods. Can your boarding schools claim that? Prescott's smile didn't waver, but his knuckles whitened around his pen. Economic anecdotes are fine, but scalability matters. The railroad needs land, and your schools complicate negotiations with tribes. John's voice cut through, low and steady. Negotiations or seizures. Crow Creek's land was secured by Judge Thornton's ruling. Your plan sounds like a way to undermine that, using education as a pretext. The railroad executives shifted uncomfortably, but Prescott pressed on. The Interior Department has authority to reallocate resources. If your schools resist integration, funding could be redirected. Judge Thornton cleared his throat, his voice calm but commanding. Mr. Prescott, the territorial court has upheld the neutral grounds deed and Crow Creek's rights. Any reallocation would require legal review, which I'd be happy to oversee. The room tensed, the air thick with unspoken threats. Emily seized the moment, standing to address the table. Gentlemen, let's talk about what's at stake. This model isn't just a school, it's a blueprint for the West. Our students have reduced conflicts, saving the cavalry thousands. They've boosted trade, strengthening towns like Pine Creek. In Chicago, reformers are studying our work for urban schools. Integrate us into a system that erases Native identity, and you lose that potential. You lose the future. Tommy Larson, nervous but determined, rose beside her. I was a kid who couldn't read 5 years ago. Now I teach others because Miss Harper and Miss Mary showed me how to learn from both sides. If you take that away, you're not helping us, you're hurting us. The railroad men exchanged glances, their confidence shaken. Major Reynolds spoke up, his voice carrying military weight. I've seen what these schools do. They prevent wars before they start. That's worth more than any coal vein or rail line. Prescott's facade cracked, but Granger's dour expression softened. You make a compelling case, Mrs. Harper Red Wolf. But Washington expects results. Prove your model can scale without disrupting federal priorities, and we might reconsider. Emily nodded, sensing an opening. Give us a year. We'll expand to 2 new sites, Fort Shaw and the Tongue River, using local teachers and community funds. Judge Thornton can oversee the legal framework, and Major Reynolds can verify the outcomes. If we succeed, you back the model as is. Thornton's eyes twinkled with approval, while Reynolds nodded. Prescott hesitated, cornered by the room's shifting mood. 1 year, he said finally. But expect close scrutiny. As the meeting adjourned, Emily felt a mix of exhaustion and hope. Outside, Helena's streets buzzed with evening life, cowboys haggling at the livery, ladies in bustled dresses strolling past the new opera house. John took her hand, his touch grounding her. You turned their game against them, he said, a rare smile breaking through. We did, Emily corrected, glancing at Mary and Tommy. But a year's not long, and Prescott won't play fair. Mary's expression was fierce. Then we work harder. My students are ready to show the world what they can do. Tommy grinned, his youthful bravado infectious. I'll write to those Chicago papers again. Let's make M listen. Back at the school, the community rallied. Pine Creek's ranchers donated lumber, Crow Creek's women wove blankets for the new sites, and Mrs. Larson's letters secured seed funding from Eastern philanthropists. The year was grueling. Long rides to new communities, sleepless nights drafting curricula, tense negotiations with skeptical tribal leaders and settler councils. But by autumn 1884, the Fort Shaw and Tongue River schools were thriving, their students mirroring Pine Creek's success. When Prescott's inspection team arrived, they found classrooms alive with learning, fields blooming with hybrid crops, and communities united in purpose. Granger, now a reluctant ally, penned a report endorsing the model, and Washington approved federal funds, without boarding school strings. The railroad shifted its focus to less contested lands, leaving Crow Creek untouched. As Emily and John stood on the schoolhouse porch, watching their students rehearse a Thanksgiving pageant that blended Crow harvest songs with settler hymns, Emily thought of the blizzard that had nearly ended her life. "I thought I was lost back then," she said, her voice soft. "But every step since has been a path home." John's arm circled her waist, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "The crows say the stars guide those who dare to walk in the dark." "We dared, Emily, and the stars led us here." The wind carried the children's voices, a promise of a frontier where borders blurred, and two worlds wove a future stronger than steel. Part 10. A test of endurance. Spring 1885 bloomed across the Montana Territory, the prairie awash in wildflowers and the hum of new life. Pine Creek had grown into a proper town, its main street lined with a bank, a dressmaker's shop, and a theater hosting Buffalo Bill's Wild West show during its summer tour. The Northern Pacific Railroad's whistle was a daily rhythm, bringing homesteaders and speculators who eyed the territory's open lands with hunger. Amid this bustle, the schoolhouse on the neutral ground between Pine Creek and Crow Creek stood as a quiet monument to a different vision, its expanded campus now boasting two buildings, a corral for student writing lessons, and a garden where Crow and settler children grew corn and medicinal herbs side by side. Emily Harpered Wolfe, now 32, walked the schoolyard with a slight waddle, her hand resting on the gentle swell of her pregnancy, a secret she and John had shared only with close family, though Hannah Red Wolfe's knowing smiles suggested Crow Creek's matriarch had guessed weeks ago. Emily's chestnut hair was streaked with sun-bleached gold, and her teaching smock, embroidered with crow beadwork, bore the dust of a morning spent planting with her students. John Red Wolfe, at 34, moved beside her, his lean frame clad in a denim shirt and a crow vest, his days as a territorial liaison now balanced with fatherly anticipation. Their school, the heart of the Harpered Wolfe model, had inspired 6 sister institutions across Montana and Wyoming, each blending native and settler knowledge to forge peace where distrust once reigned. The school's classrooms buzzed with 70 students, their ages spanning 6 to 18. Tommy Larson, now a full-time teacher, led a geometry lesson, while Joseph Red Wolfe, a skilled tracker, taught younger children to read hoofprints in the corral's dust. Mary Red Wolfe, Crow Creek's educational cornerstone, guided a group through a crow creation story, her voice weaving myth with lessons on astronomy. Pine Creek's merchants donated books, and Crow Creek's elders gifted oral histories, creating a library that drew scholars from Denver. Yet, as Emily pinned student poems to a bulletin board for the upcoming Memorial Day festival, a shadow loomed, a threat not from local miners or railroad barons, but from the distant halls of Washington, D.C. The trouble arrived via a stagecoach, its dust cloud heralding a grim-faced messenger from Helena. Sheriff Tom Baxter met Emily and John at the schoolhouse gate, his Stetson in hand, a rare sign of unease. "Got a letter from Judge Thornton," he said, his voice low. The new U.S. Commissioner of Education, Franklin Ward, is pushing a national policy, standardized schools for all territories. He's got Congress's ear, and they're eyeing your model as a regional anomaly that don't fit their mold. Emily's hand tightened on the letter, her pregnancy-heightened emotions flaring. An anomaly. Our schools have cut territorial conflicts by half and boosted trade tenfold. What mold are we breaking? John scanned the letter, his scout's instincts alert. Ward's a reformer, but he's backed by assimilationists. They want one curriculum, English only, no tribal teachings. Says it's un-American to let native kids learn their own ways. Baxter sighed, scratching his graying beard. Thornton's fighting it, and Major Reynolds is lobbying the War Department, saying your schools save them troop deployments. But Ward's got a hearing in Chicago next month, and he wants you there to defend the model, or see it folded into his system. Emily's heart sank. The federal boarding schools, with their brutal mandate to kill the Indian, save the man, were a betrayal of everything she and John had built. We can't let that happen, she said, her voice fierce. Not for our students, not for, she trailed off, her hand brushing her belly, the unspoken weight of their child's future grounding her resolve. John's dark eyes met hers, steady as ever. We go to Chicago. Show them the truth. Our way works better than their dogma. The journey to Chicago was a marathon, the railroad's iron rhythm a stark contrast to the blizzard-torn trails of their past. Emily, John, Mary, and Tommy traveled with a crate of student work, maps, essays, even a model of a Crow lodge beside a settler cabin, crafted by Joseph's younger sister, Leela. Mrs. Larson's letters had secured an audience with Chicago's Progressive Education League, a group of reformers eager to champion their cause. The group also carried a petition, now 500 signatures strong, and a letter from Crow Creek's council, penned by William Red Wolfe, asserting their right to cultural education. Chicago's skyline, a forest of brick and steel, dwarfed the frontier's open spaces. The hearing, held in a marble-clad auditorium at the University of Chicago, was a spectacle. Reporters from the Tribune, educators in bow ties and politicians in tailored suits, all buzzing with curiosity about the Montana experiment. Commissioner Ward, a tall man with a preacher's zeal, presided from a raised dais, flanked by congressional aides and a stern-faced Bureau of Indian Affairs official, Ezra Holt, whose family ties to Montana's mine. Ward's opening was polished but cold. The Harper-Red Wolfe model, while innovative, fragments our national vision. Territories must align with federal standards, English literacy, Christian values, vocational training. Dual curricula foster division, not unity. Emily rose, her pregnancy hidden by a high-waisted dress, but her voice carrying a mother's fire. Commissioner Ward, unity doesn't mean sameness. Our schools teach English and arithmetic alongside Crow tracking and history. Our graduates, settler and native, outperform territorial averages in reading and trade skills. Last year, Pine Creek's economy grew 15%, thanks to shared knowledge. That's unity you can count. Mary followed, her presence commanding. Our children learn to navigate two worlds, not abandon one. Forcing them to erase their heritage doesn't make them American, it makes them rootless. My students built a water wheel last spring, using Crow engineering and settler tools. That's progress, not division. Tommy, nervous but earnest, held up Leela's model. I was a rancher's kid who hated school. This place taught me to teach, to think. If you take away what makes it special, you're stealing from kids like me. Holt, the Indian Affairs official, leaned forward, his voice oily. Admirable, but the Bureau's mission is clear: assimilate or isolate. Your model delays the inevitable. Native cultures must yield to national progress. John's response was measured but razor-sharp. Progress that destroys half its people isn't progress, Mr. Holt. Crow Creek's land is secured, our schools court protected. Your policy would spark conflicts the Army can't afford. Ask Major Reynolds, he's seen the numbers. Reynolds, seated in the audience, nodded, his testimony from a prior letter echoing. These schools prevent wars, saving lives and dollars. The Tribune reporters scribbled furiously, sensing a story that could sway public opinion. Ward's composure slipped, his knuckles white on the gavel. Sentiment is compelling, but federal law demands uniformity. Your model's funding is at risk unless it aligns. Judge Thornton, invited as an observer, stood, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Commissioner, the Montana Territorial Court has upheld the neutral grounds deed and the model's autonomy. Overriding that requires congressional approval, which I doubt this body will grant without evidence of failure. I see none here. The Progressive Education League's chair, a bespectacled woman named Clara Vance, seized the moment. Mr. Ward, Chicago schools face ethnic divides, Irish, German, Polish. The Montana model offers a solution. Teach shared values while honoring heritage. Fund it, don't dismantle it. The room erupted in applause, catching Ward off guard. Holt's scowl deepened, but the congressional aides whispered urgently, sensing political risk. Ward adjourned the hearing, promising a decision within weeks. As the group left the auditorium, Clara Vance pulled Emily aside. You've lit a spark, Mrs. Red Wolf. Our league will push for your model in Washington. Expect invitations to speak, Boston, New York. Back in Montana, the wait was agonizing. Emily, now visibly pregnant, taught her classes with fierce determination, while John scouted new sites, his trips shadowed by rumors of Holt's allies stirring unrest among homesteaders. One evening, as they sat by the schoolhouse fire, Hannah Red Wolf knitting a blanket for the baby, Emily voiced her fear. What if we lose John? What if they take this from our child? John's hand covered hers, his voice steady. The crows say the river bends but never breaks. We've bent before, blizzards, miners, bureaucrats. We won't break now. The decision came via telegraph, relayed by Baxter's deputy. Harper Red Wolf model retained with federal funding, autonomous curriculum approved. Congressional oversight to ensure compliance. Ward Commissioner. The schoolyard erupted in cheers, students waving the dual flags as Pine Creek's church bell rang. Clara Vance's letter followed, confirming speaking engagements and a national pilot program inspired by their work. That November, as snow dusted the prairie, Emily gave birth to a daughter, named Sage after the herb that bound Crow and settler healing traditions. Holding her, Emily thought of the abandoned schoolhouse where her journey began, a frozen moment that had thawed into a legacy. She'll grow up in a world we're building, she whispered to John, Sage's tiny hand curled around her finger. John's smile was a promise. A world where no blizzard can stop us. The wind sang outside, carrying the scent of sage and hope, a frontier forever changed by two hearts who dared to bridge its divides. Part 11. The fever's shadow. The summer of 1887 scorched the Montana Territory, the prairie baked under a relentless sun that turned the Elk River to a sluggish trickle. Pine Creek had blossomed into a regional hub, its streets alive with the clatter of wagons, the chime of a new school bell, and the occasional roar of a steam locomotive unloading settlers at the Northern Pacific Depot. The schoolhouse on the neutral ground between Pine Creek and Crow Creek stood as a beacon of hope, its campus now a cluster of 3 buildings. The original classroom, a library housing Crow oral histories and settler textbooks, and a community hall where families gathered for barn dances and town meetings. 80 students filled its desks, their lessons blending algebra with Crow star navigation, Shakespeare with tribal storytelling. Emily Harpered Wolf, now 34, stood in the schoolyard, her auburn hair tied back with a crow-beaded ribbon, her eyes tired but bright as she watched her 2-year-old daughter, Sage, toddle after a butterfly. Motherhood had softened Emily's Philadelphia edges, but her frontier grit remained, her teaching smock dusted with chalk and garden soil. Beside her, John Red Wolf, 36, adjusted his wide-brimmed hat, his role as a national education envoy keeping him on the road to advocate for the Harpered Wolf model, now adopted in 10 schools across Montana, Wyoming, and Dakota. Their marriage, a tapestry woven through blizzards and battles, had deepened with Sage's arrival, though the demands of leadership left little time for quiet moments. The school's influence was undeniable. Its graduates like Tommy Larson, now a principal at the Fort Shaw School, and Joseph Red Wolf, a territorial surveyor blending Crow tracking with settler mapping, were reshaping the West. Pine Creek's saloons sold Crow-crafted moccasins, and Crow Creek's hunters shared game at Pine Creek's Labor Day barbecue, a tradition that drew crowds from Helena. Eastern newspapers, from the *Boston Globe* to the *Chicago Tribune*, ran features on the model, calling it the future of frontier education. Yet, as Emily helped Sage pick a daisy, a new threat loomed, not from bureaucrats or miners but from a silent, deadly foe, smallpox. The crisis began with a telegram, delivered by Sheriff Tom Baxter's deputy, a lanky youth named Caleb. Emily was reviewing student essays on the Battle of Little Bighorn, a balanced account drawing on Crow and settler perspectives, when Caleb burst through the schoolhouse door, panting. "Mrs. Red Wolf, Mr. Red Wolf. Doc Carter says smallpox has hit Bozeman, 3 dead already. Travelers brought it from Dakota, and it's spreading fast. He's calling a meeting tonight." John, repairing a corral fence, dropped his hammer, his scout's instincts flaring. "Bozeman's only 50 miles off. If it's here, it's coming for us." Emily's hand tightened on Sage, memories of her parents' smallpox deaths in Philadelphia flooding back. "What's Doc Carter planning?" "Vaccinations," Caleb said. "But the supply's low, and folks are panicking. Some settlers are blaming Crow Creek, saying natives spread it." The accusation stung, a reminder of the prejudice that lingered despite years of cooperation. Emily exchanged a glance with Mary Red Wolf, who'd paused her lesson on medicinal plants. "We've faced worse lies," Mary said, her voice steady. "But smallpox doesn't care who it kills. We need to act fast." That evening the community hall glowed with lamplight, packed with anxious faces, Pine Creek's ranchers, Crow Creek's elders, and families clutching children. Dr. Carter, his young face haggard, stood at the front, flanked by Baxter and William Red Wolf. "We've got enough vaccine for half the population," Carter said, his voice strained. "Priority goes to children and the elderly, but we need more doses from Helena. The governor's sending a shipment, but it'll take 3 days." A burly rancher, Jed Tanner, stood, his face red with fear. "Heard it started with Dakota Indians. Why should we trust Crow Creek to help? They could be carriers." William Red Wolf rose, his gray hair gleaming, his translators calm, unshaken. "Smallpox knows no tribe, Mr. Tanner. Crow Creek lost 20 souls to it in 70. We've been vaccinating since, thanks to Dr. Carter's clinic. Our healers know remedies to ease symptoms: willow bark, sage tea. We offer them freely." Mrs. Larson, her white bun tight, clapped sharply. "Enough nonsense, Jed. This school's kept us strong together. Crow Creek's as much Pine Creek's kin as you are. We share the vaccine, or we all fall. Emily stood, sage on her hip, her voice cutting through the murmurs. This school's taught us trust. Our students, your children, have learned to save lives, not point fingers. Joseph, Red Wolf, and Leela are mixing salve with Mary's guidance. Tommy's organizing volunteers to distribute food so families can quarantine. We'll beat this together, or not at all. John's presence beside her was a quiet anchor. My band's hunters will patrol the roads, keep travelers out till the vaccine arrives. But we need Pine Creek's riders to help. One team, one fight. Tanner hesitated, then nodded, shamed by the room's resolve. The meeting ended with a plan. Vaccinations at the school, quarantine zones in both communities, and a joint effort to prepare remedies. Hannah Red Wolf led Crow women in brewing teas, while Pine Creek's wives baked bread for isolated families. The school became a hub. Its library turned into a clinic where Carter and Mary worked side by side, vaccinating children as Leela sang Crow lullabies to calm them. The first cases hit 2 days later, a Pine Creek blacksmith and a Crow Creek elder. Panic flared, but the school's students stepped up. Joseph rigged a water system to keep the clinic clean, while Tommy and Leela delivered supplies on horseback, their faces masked with bandanas. Emily, despite John's protests, taught classes between nursing shifts, her pregnancy slowing her but not stopping her. Sage needs a world worth growing up in, she told him, her eyes fierce. I won't sit this out. John, leading patrols, found his scout skills tested by fear as much as fever. One night, a mob of Dakota drifters, blaming Crow Creek for the outbreak, tried to burn a tipi at the village's edge. John and Baxter's riders stopped them, but the incident left scars. Hate's harder to cure than smallpox, John muttered, cleaning his rifle by the schoolhouse fire. The vaccine shipment arrived, a cavalry escort ensuring its safety. Carter worked through the night, vaccinating every soul, while Hannah's remedies eased the sick. By week's end, the outbreak was contained, 5 deaths, a tragedy but far fewer than Bozeman's toll. The school's role as a lifeline earned praise in the Helena Independent *, which ran a front-page story. Montana school saves frontier from smallpox. Eastern reporters arrived, snapping photographs of Emily and Mary teaching side by side, Sage toddling between them. At a victory barbecue, held under the community hall's new tin roof, Pine Creek's fiddlers played as Crow drummers kept rhythm, the air thick with the scent of roasted venison and cornbread. Sheriff Baxter raised a mason jar of cider in a toast. To the Red Wolf model, proof we're stronger together, fever or no fever. Later, as stars glittered above, Emily and John sat on the schoolhouse porch, Sage asleep in John's arms. The prairie stretched before them, its quiet vastness a reminder of the blizzard that had birthed their journey. I thought smallpox took everything from me once, Emily said, her voice soft. Now it's shown me what we've built, a family, a future. John's hand found hers, his touch warm against the night's chill. The crows say the fire tests the strongest trees. We've been tested, Emily, and we're still standing. Sage stirred, her tiny hand clutching a daisy, and Emily smiled, her heart full. For her, we'll keep standing, no matter what comes. The wind whispered, carrying the scent of sage and resilience, a frontier forever bound by the legacy of a storm and the courage of those who faced it. Part 12. The dawn of statehood, November 1889, brought a crisp edge to the Montana Territory, the prairie gilded with frost as the region stood on the cusp of statehood. Pine Creek had transformed into a thriving town, its streets bustling with mercantiles, a 2-story hotel, and a newspaper office printing the *Pine Creek Gazette*. The Northern Pacific Railroad's depot hummed with arrivals, homesteaders claiming land under the expanded Homestead Act, merchants hawking wares for the statehood celebration planned for November 8. Amid this ferment, the schoolhouse on the neutral ground between Pine Creek and Crow Creek stood resolute, its campus now a small village of 4 buildings, 2 classrooms, a library, and a community hall hosting everything from quilting bees to Crow Council meetings. Emily Harpered Wolf, now 36, stood in the schoolyard, her hands cradling her newborn son, William, named for John's father, while 4-year-old Sage chased a hoop with a stick, her laughter bright against the morning chill. Emily's face, weathered by a decade on the frontier, glowed with maternal pride, her teaching apron adorned with crow beadwork that matched Sage's tiny moccasins. John Red Wolf, 38, leaned against the corral fence, his denim shirt rolled up as he repaired a gate, his role as a national advocate for Native-inclusive education, keeping him in constant motion between Montana, Washington, D.C., and new school sites in Idaho. Their family, a living bridge between worlds, anchored the Harpered Wolf model, now a network of 12 schools shaping the West's future. The school's 90 students were a testament to its vision. Leela Red Wolf, now a teacher alongside Tommy Larson, led lessons on crow astronomy, while Joseph Red Wolf, a respected surveyor, taught mapmaking that blended tribal landmarks with settler grids. Pine Creek's 4th of July fairs now featured crow horse races, and Crow Creek's hunters joined Pine Creek's harvest festivals, their shared tables laden with venison and pumpkin pie. The New York Times had dubbed the model America's frontier experiment, and Emily's speeches in Boston and Chicago had inspired urban schools to adopt dual-language programs. Yet as Emily rocked William, a new threat emerged, tied to Montana's statehood and a resurgent wave of anti-Native sentiment. The crisis arrived with a rider from Helena, Sheriff Tom Baxter's eldest son, Sam, now a deputy with his father's steady gaze. Emily was grading essays on the Constitution, a nod to statehood, when Sam dismounted, clutching a leather pouch. "Ma'am, Mr. Red Wolf," he said, breathless. "Judge Thornton sent this. The statehood convention's debating education laws, and a faction led by Senator Amos Crane wants to restrict Native schools. They're calling your model a threat to state unity." John's hammer stilled, his scout's instincts sharpening. "Crane's the old mining boss. He's been sore since we blocked his coal grab in '81. Emily shifted William, her heart racing. "Restrict how? Our schools are court-protected, federally funded." Sam handed her a folded Helena, independent *. "Crane's pushing a bill to limit tribal curricula, says it's unpatriotic. He's got homesteaders riled, claiming Native education takes funds from settler kids. Thornton's calling you to Helena for the convention, says your voice could sway the vote." Mary Red Wolf, overhearing from the classroom door, joined them, her eyes fierce. "Crane stirring old hates. My students deserve their heritage, same as Pine Creek's." "We'll go," Emily said, her voice steel despite the weight of newborn exhaustion. "Sage and William come too. This is their fight as much as ours." The journey to Helena was swift, the railroad speed a stark contrast to the blizzard trails of their past. Emily, John, Mary, and Tommy traveled with Sage and William, their trunks packed with student work, poems, maps, economic reports proving the model's worth. Mrs. Larson's telegrams had rallied allies, including Clara Vance's Progressive Education League, now a national force. The family carried a petition, 800 signatures strong, and a Crow Creek resolution, penned by Hannah Red Wolf, demanding equal education rights. Helena's statehood convention, held in a grand hall draped with red, white, and blue bunting, was a circus of ambition. Politicians in frock coats, ranchers in boots, and reporters scribbling for Eastern papers. Senator Amos Crane, a barrel-chested man with a silver goatee, dominated the Education Committee, his voice booming with populist fervor. Judge Thornton, Major Reynolds, and a new ally, Governor Joseph Toole, sat among the delegates, their support a lifeline. Clara Vance, her spectacles glinting, had secured Emily a speaking slot, a rare honor for a woman in such a forum. Crane opened with a tirade, his fist pounding the podium. Montana's a state now, not a territory of divided loyalties. Native schools breed separatism, siphoning funds from our children. The Harper-Ed Wolf model, for all its charm, defies our American destiny. We must unify under one flag, one language. Emily rose, William cradled in a sling, Sage holding her hand, her voice clear as a frontier dawn. Senator Crane, unity isn't uniformity. Our schools teach English, history, and science alongside Crow skills that save lives: tracking, planting, healing. Our graduates have cut cattle rustling by 20%, boosted trade by millions. Last year, Pine Creek's bank funded a new mill, thanks to Crow settler partnerships. That's American prosperity, not division. Mary followed, her presence a quiet storm. My people have lived here since the stars were young. Our children learn to be Crow and American, not one or the other. Leela's astronomy class mapped a comet last spring, published in a Denver journal. Is that separatism or Montana's pride? Tommy, now a seasoned educator, held up a student's essay. I was a homesteader's son who couldn't spell statehood. This school made me a teacher. If you gut it, you're gutting kids like me, white, native, all of us. Sage, unprompted, piped up, her tiny voice carrying. I learned Crow stories and spelling. It's fun. The room erupted in laughter, breaking Crane's momentum. Governor Toole seized the moment, his Irish brogue warm but firm. Senator, Montana's strength is its people, all its people. These schools prevent conflicts, saving us taxes and lives. I've seen their graduates build bridges, literal and not. Why tear that down? Crane's face reddened, but Major Reynolds' testimony sealed the room's mood. The Army backs this model. It's cheaper to educate than to fight. Crane's bill would spark unrest we can't contain. Clara Vance stood, her voice cutting through murmurs. The Progressive Education League has petitioned Congress to protect this model nationally. Boston and Chicago are watching, Senator. Montana could lead, or it could fall behind. The delegates, swayed by the crowd's murmurs and reporters' pens, voted down Crane's bill, 62-38. A new law enshrined the model's autonomy, with state funding to expand it. The Gazette *S headline blared, Montana's schools defy division, set statehood standard. Crane stormed out, but Toole shook Emily's hand, promising support. Back at the school, a statehood celebration rivaled any frontier 4th of July. Pine Creek's brass band played Sweet Montana Home, a new state anthem, as Crow drummers kept time. Children waved flags, stars and stripes beside Crow designs, while tables groaned with apple pie and venison stew. Sage danced with Layla, William cooed in Hannah's arms, and Emily and John stood at the hall's edge, their hands entwined. I thought the blizzard was our hardest fight, Emily said, her eyes tracing the stars. But every battle, miner's fever, now this, shows me we're stronger than I dreamed. John's smile was her lodestar. The Crows say the river carves the canyon, slow but sure. We're carving our canyon, Emily, for Sage, William, all of them. The wind carried the music, a frontier hymn of resilience. binding two worlds in a state born from a storm's enduring legacy. Part 13. The land's last stand. Spring 1892 draped the Montana prairie in a quilt of green, the Elk River sparkling under a sky that promised renewal. Pine Creek had grown into a small city, its skyline punctuated by a new courthouse, a vaudeville theater, and a grain elevator fed by the Northern Pacific Railroad. The schoolhouse on the neutral ground between Pine Creek and Crow Creek stood as a cornerstone, its campus now a vibrant hub with 5 buildings, 3 classrooms, a library with a printing press, and a community hall hosting Montana's first interracial literary society. 100 students filled its rooms, their lessons weaving calculus with Crow oral traditions, American history with tribal land stewardship. Emily Harpered Wolf, now 39, stood in the school's garden, her hands guiding 7-year-old Sage as she planted sunflower seeds, while 4-year-old William toddled nearby, clutching a toy horse carved by his grandfather. Emily's auburn hair, streaked with gray, was tied with a crow-beaded cord, and her teaching dress bore the faint ink stains of a morning spent editing student newspapers. John Red Wolf, 41, leaned against a fence, his denim jacket patched but proud, his role as a national education reformer taking him to congressional hearings and Wild West exhibitions, where he showcased the Harpered Wolf model to audiences from Omaha to London. Their family, a living testament to unity, anchored a network of 15 schools, each a bulwark against division in a rapidly changing West. The school's legacy was profound. Leela Red Wolf, now a professor at Montana's New State University, taught anthropology, while Tommy Larson ran a teacher training program in Wyoming. Joseph Red Wolf, a territorial legislator, drafted laws protecting native land rights, his maps guiding homesteaders away from tribal grounds. Pine Creek's annual Harvest Moon Festival, a blend of settler square dances and Crow-buffalo ceremonies, drew thousands, and Crow Creek's artisans sold beadwork at Chicago's Columbian Exposition. Yet as Emily watched Sage sprinkle dirt over seeds, a new threat loomed, a federal land reclamation effort that could unravel everything they'd built. The crisis arrived with a cavalry escort, their hooves kicking up dust as they delivered a sealed packet to the schoolhouse gate. Sheriff Tom Baxter, now gray and stooped, met Emily and John, his face heavy with worry. "It's from the Bureau of Reclamation," he said, handing over the packet. "They are eyeing Crow Creek's riverfront for a dam, says it'll irrigate new homesteads. Senator Crane's behind it, stirring up populists who want cheap land. They're calling the school a tribal obstacle." John's jaw tightened, his scout's calm masking a storm. Crane never quit. This is his old mining grudge dressed up as progress. Emily opened the packet, her hands steady despite William's tug at her skirt. The letter, signed by Reclamation Director Ezra Holt, cited the 1891 Irrigation Act, claiming Crow Creek's land for public use. A hearing in Washington, D.C., was set for June, with the school's neutral ground flagged for acquisition. "This violates our court rulings," she said, her voice sharp. Judge Thornton's 1889 decision protected this land. Baxter sighed. "Holt's got Congress's ear, and populists are loud, say natives hoard land settlers need. Thornton's retired, but Governor Toole's fighting for you. He wants you in Washington." Mary Red Wolf, grading star charts nearby, joined them, her expression fierce. "They want our river, our heart. My students won't let that go without a fight." "We'll go," Emily said, Sage's hand in hers. "This is for them, Sage, William, all our kids." The journey to Washington was a grueling odyssey, the train's rhythm a stark contrast to the blizzard trails of their youth. Emily, John, Mary, and Leela traveled with Sage and William, their trunks packed with evidence, student journals, economic studies, and a petition with 1,200 signatures. Mrs. Larson's telegrams had rallied Clara Vance's Progressive Education League, now a political force, and Joseph's legislative contacts secured a congressional audience. Crow Creek's council sent a woven blanket, a gift for the Capitol, its patterns telling the story of their land. Washington's marble halls, aglow with gaslights, buzzed with the Gilded Age's frenetic energy, senators in tailcoats, lobbyists whispering over bourbon, reporters from the *Washington Post sniffing for scandal. The hearing, held in a Senate chamber adorned with American eagles, was a battleground. Senator Amos Crane, his silver goatee now white, led the reclamation push, his voice dripping with populist zeal. Governor Toole, Major Reynolds, and Clara Vance sat among the allies, with a new supporter, Senator Maria Caldwell, a Montana suffragist championing native rights. Crane's opening was a thunderclap. Montana's farmers need water, not sentiment. Crow Creek's land and that school block progress. The Reclamation Act demands sacrifice for the greater good, American homesteads over tribal relics. Emily stood, William asleep in a sling, Sage clutching her skirt, her voice a frontier hymn. Senator Crane, progress built on theft isn't progress. Our school has irrigated more than land, it's grown peace. Our students have tripled Pine Creek's grain exports, using Crow water techniques. Last year, they designed a canal saving Bozeman $50,000. That's American ingenuity, not a relic. Leela followed, her professor's poise commanding. My people have stewarded the Elk River for centuries. Our students teach settlers to farm without draining it. The Columbian Exposition showcased their work, Crow and White, side by side. Is that an obstacle or Montana's pride? Mary held up a student's journal. This is Leela's sister's work, a plan to share river water, not hoard it. Our children solve problems you'd rather fight over. Sage, bold as ever, added, my school's fun. We learn rivers and numbers. The chamber chuckled, softening the mood. Senator Caldwell rose, her voice cutting through murmurs. Montana's statehood promised equality. This school delivers it. Crane's plan would spark unrest, costing millions. I've seen their graduates, they're our future, not our past. Major Reynolds nodded. The Army backs this model. It saved us from wars Crane's policies would ignite. Clara Vance sealed the case. The Progressive Education League has 10,000 members demanding this model's protection. The New York Times is watching, Senator. Montana could lead America or shame it. Crane's bluster faltered, his allies shifting as reporters scribbled. The committee, swayed by public pressure and Toole's promise of alternative dam sites, voted 8-3 to exempt Crow Creek and the school from reclamation. A new bill, co-sponsored by Caldwell, funded river-sharing projects based on the school's model. The *Post**S headline roared, Montana school saves tribal land, redefines progress. Back at Pine Creek, a Harvest Moon festival outshone any statehood bash. Crow drummers joined a ragtime band, children waved dual flags, and tables sagged with huckleberry pie and bison roast. Sage led a student parade, William clapped from John's shoulders, and Emily stood with Hannah, their eyes misty. I thought the blizzard was our end, Emily said, the stars above mirroring her hope. But every fight, fever, politics, now this, shows me our roots are unbreakable. John's hand found hers, his voice a quiet vow. The Crow say the land sings to those who listen. We listened, Emily, and it's singing for our children. The wind carried the festival's joy, a frontier anthem of unity, etched forever by a storm, and the family who turned its fury into hope. Part 14. The tide of division autumn 1895 cast a somber glow over Montana, the prairie's golden hues muted by the economic shadow of the Panic of 1893. Pine Creek, once a bustling hub, felt the sting of bank closures and railroad layoffs, its streets quieter despite the new electric street lamps flickering at dusk. The schoolhouse on the neutral ground between Pine Creek and Crow Creek stood as a defiant beacon, its campus now a small academy with 6 buildings, 4 classrooms, a library with a telegraph for student journalism, and a community hall hosting women's suffrage rallies alongside Crow storytelling nights. 120 students filled its halls, their lessons blending chemistry with Crow herbalism, civics with tribal governance. Emily Harpered Wolfe, now 42, stood in the school's lecture hall, her graying auburn hair pinned with a crow-beaded clasp, her eyes bright as she guided 10-year-old Sage through a debate on the Bill of Rights. 7-year-old William, clutching a model train, listened from the front row, his questions as sharp as his sister's. Emily's teaching coat, patched but adorned with suffrage ribbons, bore the dust of a morning spent mentoring student reporters. John Red Wolfe, 44, sat nearby, his weathered face softened by pride, his role as a national education ambassador taking him to populism-fueled conventions and native congresses, advocating for the Harpered Wolfe model, now a network of 20 schools across the West. Their family, a bridge across cultures, was a living emblem of resilience, though the strain of constant advocacy tested their quiet moments. The school's impact was profound. Leela Red Wolfe, now a dean at Montana State University, published books on native anthropology, while Tommy Larson led a national teacher training institute in Denver. Joseph Red Wolfe, a state senator, championed laws protecting tribal water rights, his policies shaping Montana's irrigation boom. Pine Creek's Labor Day rodeos now featured Crow trick riders, and Crow Creek's weavers sold blankets at San Francisco's Panama Pacific Exposition. Yet, as Emily helped Sage draft a speech for the state's women's suffrage convention, a new threat emerged, a national anti-immigrant and anti-native backlash, fueled by economic despair and political opportunism. The crisis arrived with a courier from Helena, Sheriff Tom Baxter's grandson, Ethan, a wiry teen with a deputy's badge. Emily was reviewing student editorials on the Sherman Silver Purchase Act, a nod to the economic crisis, when Ethan burst in, clutching a newspaper and a letter. "Mrs. Red Wolfe, Mr. Red Wolfe," he panted. "Governor Toole sent this. Congress is debating the Indian Education Act, pushed by Senator Amos Crane's allies. They want to cut funding for non-assimilative schools like yours, call it a drain on American taxpayers." John's hand stilled on his notebook, his scout's instincts flaring. "Crane's ghost keeps haunting us. This is his old land grab in a new suit, blaming natives for the Depression." Emily scanned the asterisk Helena Independent asterisk, its headline screaming, "Native schools sap American prosperity." The letter, from Governor Toole, urged them to a congressional hearing in Denver, warning that populist and nativist factions were rallying against foreign influences, lumping native education with immigrant labor. "This violates our federal protections," she said, her voice steady despite William's tug at her sleeve. "The 1889 statehood law guaranteed our autonomy." Ethan nodded. "Toole's got Senator Caldwell fighting for you, but Crane's allies are loud. Populists say your schools favor Indians over real Americans." Mary Red Wolfe, teaching a class on crow basketry, joined them, her eyes blazing. "Our students are as American as Crane's voters. They've saved Montana millions by preventing conflicts. We'll fight this." "We'll go to Denver," Emily said, Sage's hand in hers. For our children, for all of them. The journey to Denver was a whirlwind. The trains clatter a far cry from the blizzard trails of their youth. Emily, John, Mary, and Leela traveled with Sage and William, their trunks packed with evidence, student patents, economic reports, and a petition with 2,000 signatures. Clara Vance's Progressive Education League, now a transcontinental force, had secured a platform, and Joseph's senatorial allies arranged a congressional audience. Crow Creek's council sent a beaded banner, its patterns narrating their resilience, a gift for the hearing. Denver's Civic Auditorium, aglow with chandeliers, buzzed with Gilded Age fervor, congressmen in bowlers, suffragists in sashes, reporters from the Denver Post sniffing for drama. The hearing, chaired by Senator Henry Vaughn, a Crane ally with a nativist streak, was a battleground. Governor Toole, Senator Maria Caldwell, and a new ally, Congressman William Jennings Bryan, a populist with a soft spot for education, sat among the supporters. Clara Vance, her white hair a crown, had rallied educators nationwide to attend. Vaughn's opening was a populist jab. America's workers starve, while native schools siphon funds for un-American teachings. The Indian Education Act will redirect resources to assimilative institutions, ensuring our nation's unity. Emily stood, William on her hip, Sage by her side, her voice a frontier clarion. Senator Vaughn, unity thrives on strength, not erasure. Our schools teach chemistry and crow healing, producing graduates who have cut Montana's drought losses by 30%. Last year, Pine Creek's trade with Crow Creek generated $2 million. That's American prosperity, not a drain. Leela followed, her academic poise electric. My students patented a windmill combining crow engineering with settler mechanics, showcased at the Panama Pacific Exposition. Our model fuels America's innovation, not its division. Mary held up a student's economic study. This shows our schools have saved the government $5 million in conflict costs. Forcing assimilation would ignite unrest, costing more than any budget cut could save. Sage, bold as ever, added, "My school teaches me to be proud of Mom and Dad's worlds." "Why's that bad?" The room murmured approval, reporters scribbling. Congressman Bryan rose, his orator's voice booming. "Montana's schools show populism's true heart, lifting all, not pitting us against each other. These children are America's future, not its foe." Senator Caldwell's suffragist fire flared. "Women and natives built this model. Deny it, and you deny half our nation's strength." The Boston Globe watches, Senator. Will Montana lead or falter? Clara Vance sealed the case. Our league's 50,000 members demand this model's expansion, not its destruction. Chicago's schools are adopting it for immigrant children. America can learn from Montana. Vaughn's composure cracked, his allies wavering as the *Post**S reporters captured the shift. The committee, pressured by Bryan's populist appeal and Caldwell's national backing, voted 7-4 to reject the funding cuts, passing a resolution to expand the model nationwide. The *Post**S headline roared, "Montana Schools Triumph, Redefine American Education." Back at Pine Creek, a Harvest Moon Festival outdid all before, electric lights mingling with bonfires as Crow drummers joined a jazz band from Butte. Children waved flags, stars and stripes beside Crow designs, while tables groaned with huckleberry cobbler and elk stew. Sage read her speech to applause, William rode Joseph's shoulders, and Emily stood with John, their eyes tracing the horizon. "The blizzard was just the start," Emily said, the stars above her guide. "Every fight, fever, statehood, now this, shows our children a world worth fighting for." John's hand clasped hers, his voice a quiet vow. The crows say the stars shine brightest in the darkest nights. We've shone Emily for Sage, William, and beyond. The wind carried the festival's joy, a frontier anthem of unity, forged in a storm and sustained by a family's unyielding heart. Part 15. Epilogue. The light beyond the storm. October 1905 bathed the Montana prairie in a golden haze, the Elk River glinting like a ribbon of memory under an endless sky. Pine Creek had grown into a proud city, its skyline graced by a red brick university, a vaudeville palace, and a Carnegie library, gifts of the progressive era's optimism. The Northern Pacific Railroad's whistle still sang, but automobiles now rumbled alongside wagons, heralding a new century. At the heart of this transformation stood the Harper Wolf Academy, no longer a lone schoolhouse, but a sprawling campus on the neutral ground between Pine Creek and Crow Creek. Its 7 buildings, classrooms, a science lab, a library, and a community hall, hummed with 200 students, their voices blending English and Crow, physics and tribal lore in a symphony of shared dreams. Emily Harper Wolf, now 48, sat on the academy's porch, her auburn hair fully silver, woven with a crow-beaded braid that Sage had crafted for her birthday. Her face, etched with lines of laughter and resolve, glowed as she read a letter from Leela Red Wolf, now a Smithsonian curator, whose exhibit on Crow-settler collaboration had opened in Washington, D.C. Beside her, John Red Wolf, 50, polished a wooden flute, his hands still calloused from a youth spent scouting, though his days were now spent as Montana's first Native Education Commissioner. Their marriage, forged in a blizzard's crucible nearly 3 decades ago, had weathered every storm, miners, smallpox, politics, and emerged as a beacon for their children and their state. Sage, now 20, stood in the lecture hall, her professor's poise commanding as she taught anthropology to a class of settler and Crow students, her crow-beaded dress a nod to her heritage. At 17, William, a budding engineer, tinkered in the lab, his latest invention, a solar-powered water pump, set to debut at Pine Creek's Harvest Moon Festival. The siblings, raised in the Academy's embrace, embodied its vision. Sage scholarship bridged cultures, while William's innovations merged Crow sustainability with settler technology. Their parents' legacy, the Harper Wolf model, had grown into a national movement, with 50 schools from Arizona to Minnesota, each a testament to education's power to unite. Pine Creek's Main Street sold Crow quilts beside settler boots, and Crow Creek's ranchers partnered with Pine Creek's farmers, their co-op feeding half the state. The New York Times called the model America's moral compass, and Emily's memoirs, Blizzard-Born were a bestseller, inspiring suffragists and reformers from Boston to San Francisco. Yet, as Emily folded Leela's letter, a quiet reflection settled over her. Montana's progress hadn't erased prejudice. Nativist whispers still lingered in saloons, and federal policies like the Dawes Act threatened tribal lands elsewhere. But the Academy stood as a bulwark, its graduates shaping a West where unity trumped division. Sage had just returned from a congressional testimony, defending Native education against a new assimilationist push, her eloquence echoing Emily's fire. William, meanwhile, was designing irrigation systems to protect Crow Creek's river, a nod to Joseph Red Wolf's legacy as a senator, now retired but ever present at festival councils. The Harvest Moon Festival of 1905 was a triumph, outshining even Montana's statehood celebrations. Electric lanterns lit the campus, mingling with bonfires as Crow drummers joined a ragtime orchestra, their rhythms weaving a new American anthem. Children waved dual flags, stars and stripes beside Crow designs, while tables groaned with huckleberry pie, elk roast, and Hannah Red Wolf's sage bread, a recipe now in every Montana cookbook. Sage led a student choir, their song blending America the Beautiful with a Crow harvest hymn, while William unveiled his pump to applause, its hum promising water for generations. Mary Red Wolf, now a grandmother, sat with Tommy Larson, their laughter a bridge across decades. Mrs. Larson, frail but fierce, toasted from her wheelchair, her Progressive Education League now a global force. Emily and John stood at the festival's edge, their hands entwined, the prairie stretching before them like a canvas of memory. The stars above mirrored the night they'd survived in Raven's Hollow, the blizzard's howl a distant echo. "I thought that storm would be my end," Emily said, her voice thick with the weight of years. "But it was our beginning. Sage, William, this academy, all of it." John's eyes, still sharp as a scout's, traced the horizon. "The crows say the wind carries the seeds of tomorrow. That blizzard planted ours, Emily, and they've grown taller than we dreamed." Sage joined them, her arm around William, who held a festival ribbon. "You built this," Sage said, her voice soft but sure. "Not just the school, but a world where I can be Crow, American, and me." William grinned, his engineer's mind already racing. "And I'm making sure it lasts. Water, power, everything to keep this place alive." Emily's heart swelled. The memory of her parents' smallpox deaths in Philadelphia, now a faint ache, beside the joy of her children's future. She thought of the abandoned schoolhouse, its crumbling walls a lifetime ago, and the family that had grown from its shelter. A family not just of blood but of two communities, bound by trust. The festival's music rose, a chorus of voices young and old, settler and Crow, singing of a Montana where no storm could break their roots. As the moon climbed, casting silver over the prairie, Emily leaned into John, their children beside them. "We became lost in a blizzard," she whispered, "and found our way home." John's flute began a soft melody, its notes weaving with the wind, a final anthem for a frontier forever changed by a storm's mercy and the love that turned its fury into light.